Hello everyone, Squiz here. Welcome to the show. I'm glad to see you again. Hope you will enjoy the book we're going to discuss. It's Codename 1 Alpha. And it is. And it's quite a long book. It's about 493 pages. And it's the only book which is actually sort of in pink. There's good reasons for that. And it's a really good book. It's a good book to read, but it's one of those which I will actually struggle to tell you everything about it. Simply because there's so much inside it which is of great importance. So I made some notes, all of 23 pages, but I will just rush through them. Try to keep us to an hour or just after an hour. As I always say to you, that if you really want details, you have to read the book. You cannot just depend on me telling you about it in about an hour. I mean, that's ridiculous for 500 pages. It's a book I thoroughly enjoyed writing, but it's also a book which really, really shocked me because basically it deals with human trafficking. That is what you call white slavery these days. That's where we discovered the link between Muslim extremism, the jihadi type of things, which again I say to you is a very, very small, tiny minority of that faith. And human trafficking, and then there's also a link with other things which link it to terrorism, which is very fascinating. And so we do a few case studies inside the book. And then right at the end of the book, where we actually get hold of the human traffickers, where Heroine, Angelique Dawson and the team decide that they will ensure that these people get what they deserve. Now, I'm not going to reveal what they did. You can read the book in the last pages. But I have a question for you, and that is, how do you burn somebody at 53,000 feet inside an aircraft? How do you burn somebody alive? Yeah, if you don't know the torture method, well, then that's good, and I'm glad you don't know it. But it is innovative, I suppose. And let's leave it at that. Many people ask me, is this book true? Is it based upon reality? The answer is yes, absolutely. But in chapter 7 of this book, Angelique actually describes human trafficking and white slavery to you. And it's a fairly long chapter, so I'll only be able to tell you certain things here and there. And so that makes this video not suitable for children. I won't be too graphic, but it's definitely not something which you need to have your child listen to. Also, I would say to you that actually you should tell your child about what you read in a more, civilized manner than what I wrote. Because these things are happening, and it's happening every day in every country and probably in the house right next to you. It is amazing. It's really amazing. It's actually the second attempt where we tried to assist with knowledge in this field. There was another book, I believe, codename Alphabet 52, I think it was, where we described drug rape and how they use these pills, these 3 different mainstream pills they would spike your drink with. And then, of course, you sort of go into a trance. It's almost, you're not unconscious, but you're not conscious either. And you're almost like childlike, like toddler-like, so you can be when manipulated and get into compromising positions. Of course, there's no consent, so it will always be rape. Even if you pick up a woman in a bar and she's a little bit under the influence, or she had some drugs and she's a bit high, there's no way in the world, legally speaking, she can actually consent to whatever you two do later. And therefore, it is happening to you, it is rape. And you should be punished accordingly. Of course, in today's society where everything is basically permissive, it was different when I was a young man. You simply didn't do such things until you were married. You had to wear a ring. Of course, it did happen. Of course, it did happen. But if a woman then got into trouble, as we said, and there's a child on the way, you were expected to marry her. And if she was a police member, in other words, a female police member, she would definitely be fired from the force for behaving like that. Even if love was involved, it's amazing. Totally wrong, by the way. The man would not be. But anyway, so Codename 1 Alpha, let's start going through this. It's very fascinating because for us who studied counter-terrorism, it's a funny thing, you can actually get degrees in that now. I believe Cambridge University in the UK is actually famous for your postgraduate level studies you can do there at master's degree level and higher. And I once approached my old university, my own university, at a Free State University, and I said, "Why, guys, you know what? I spent 6 years here as a student, did my law degrees there, and then also law school. And so I feel some affinity towards the university, At the end of the day, they did train me very, very well. We could see that when we started practicing law, I could see we were better. And I'm not saying that to look down on any other university, except Pretoria University, Oxshame. Actually, Stellenbosch is the one we hated most. It had to do with rugby. But anyway, to make a long story short, I knew we were very well trained, and I knew that Sub-Saharan Africa is actually the new theater of counter-terrorism. And now I speak outright jihadism. We're jihadis, Muslim extremists. There's a huge difference, of course, between a radical extremist type of person and the one who just is a fundamentalist. But I explained that to you before, so you need to know the difference. Something more must happen for a man to become radical enough to go and kill. Mostly what happens is in counter-terrorism, and this is probably not by chance, is that the second beast and mates, that is the US and NATO, they kill so many innocents. They just murder innocents, the Israelis too. They murder so many innocents that there's a popular uprising then against them. And also they have a tendency to occupy. And once you do that, of course, the formula is there for a long, bitter war. And it's one of those which you as an occupying power can never win. Because at some stage your population is going to get fed up with this. And your soldiers are going to get fed up and they're going to react even worse because they get scared. And it doesn't take much to scare the US military, really. It takes almost nothing. We saw that with a panic shooting when they ran away from Afghanistan at the airport when a bomb went off. Yeah, I often speak about these things, and I know there's a few people who think, "Wow, man, you must really hate the US." No, I actually don't. I don't. I think there's wonderful people there. I say these things as a warning because I'm not Western orientated at all. I don't care. I look at you from a different viewpoint. You can always say I look at you as the way your enemy looks at you. But I don't hate you. No, not at all. If I hated you, I would never warn you. Never. I would let you die. And I would laugh. So while I'm still warning you, I'm okay. Of course, it takes a little bit of brain power to understand what I said now, and most people, well, many of them just don't have it. But anyway, that doesn't matter. That's how you create terrorism. You create it by killing the wrong people, and then keep on doing it, and then staying on occupying, and then put yourself above the law of a country, and then you start raping and committing even more war crimes. Yeah, and it's coming out, that's the sad thing about it. It will always come out, always. Perhaps it's a good thing, I don't know. But it's not in the old days, where the victors write the history books and that's the only history you get. No, 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 no. These days with cell phones and alternate media, which I suppose I'm one of them, you're going to get exposed, man. So it's not worth your while to even go that route. But anyway, when the Taliban started, they actually was known as the saviors of women. Would you believe that? Yeah, they actually rescued women who were being abused. There's a very famous picture which came out in the early 90s where there were two fellows who abducted two women, young females. They cut their hair off to make them look like boys, I suppose. I don't know really why. And then they really abused them, and then one of these or their parents or someone reported this to the Taliban. Now at that stage, the Taliban was actually nothing. It was just a sect trained in the religious schools, which are financed by who? Let me hear. Iran. No, not Iran, not at all. No, Iran will bomb such schools if they can, because it's a difference between a Shiite, a Shia Muslim, and a Sunni. No, that is paid for you by your mate. What do I hear? Saudi? Yeah, Saudi Arabia. Yeah, that place. Yeah, a big mate of Donald Trump. He always dancing around with swords. A country which executes more people than any other country. Yeah, that one. A country which even have on their law books and they implemented crucifixion. Yeah, did you know that? They crucify people in that country. Wow, how amazing. That same country we went and cut up that American Saudi journalist. Yeah. They got him into the embassy somewhere and they just murdered him and cut him up. Yeah. But it's forgotten now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's pathetic, the double standards of the West, But anyway, these madrasas, I think we call them, they're the ones who produce this very strict form of Islam, very much based upon Wahhabism or something like that, which is the sect which is Saudis, which is anyway created by the Brits, who else? And they took the law into their own hands. They went and they found these people and they punished them and they hanged them from a gun barrel of a T-56 tank or something. Yeah, there's very famous pictures of that. I will not be putting the picture on for you. If you don't know about it, go and search for it, but I don't want to put it here. But anyway, they're hanging there, and that's where the Taliban movement actually started. And then they moved out, and with the assistance of Pakistani Air Force and Pakistani Special Forces, who both of them are actually very good. They then took over the country fell, and the Taliban rule came into being, and it stayed into being until the US invasion. For what? I don't know, because the Taliban had nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks. Nothing whatsoever. Neither did Iraq. Now, Iraq, we know why, because George W. Bush actually believed that Saddam Hussein wanted to kill his parents, that his daddy, the former president, George H. Bush, and his mom, and therefore he wanted revenge. That's a one story. And then there's, of course, what General Wesley Clark, who said, no, they want to actually defeat 5 countries in the Middle East to safeguard Israel. Now, he didn't say to safeguard Israel, but it's a logical assumption. It's a logical deduction. The only country where we actually benefit from Iraq being down, Syria being down, Iran disappearing is the Jewish state. What else? And you can't blame him. If you have a big brother like the US, the second beast of the Bible, yeah, shall I say it at minute 14 and 46 seconds, 15 minutes, oath of evil, warn Protestantism, go and read, find out why I call the US second beast of the Bible, as described in the books of Revelation and Daniel. Go and read it. Go and do some studies. Read the book. Find out. Do some research. Yes, I'm not wrong. Totally not wrong. You have the Antichrist. Yes, with the papacy. You have the dragon. The dragon, Satan, Lucifer, gives his power to the first beast, the little horn, that is the Catholic system. By which, what I say again, I don't mean individual Catholics, unless they are Jesuits, and I absolutely mean them. And then they would get a deadly wound, which would heal, and is healing as it is. I've explained these things to you so many times. But it's important that I keep on saying it, because you have to understand, if you want to understand where the US is coming from, and of course, with that I include NATO, because even though they're not the second beast, they're affiliated to it. And they will definitely implement fascism. That is the preferred system of a Catholic Church. Not my words, their words. I can quote it for you here if you want to see it. It's in Oath of Evil and other books. So why did they attack Afghanistan then? Well, unofficially, people say it had to do with the opium trade. If they could get hold of the opium fields in Afghanistan, they could control that area too. It might be true, I remember I spoke to my editor, the one before Rebecca took over, about this for a long time, and this was a smart man. I mean, he was a 101 battalion vet in Vietnam, 2 tours of duty, lost an eye. Just a great guy called Alex. And I miss Alex. I don't know where he is now, but if he listens here for whatever reason, talk to me, man. I miss you. And Alex is a wise man, and he spoke several languages fluently. And so he always said to me it had to do with the CIA and drug smuggling. And at first I didn't believe it, because the CIA is so well funded. They don't need to do this. But then if you look at it from a different view, once again, from the second beast view, and you look at it at the fact that virtually every single one of their directors were either very, very strict traditional Catholics, all of them, every single one of them. It's in my books. Or members of secret societies like George H. Bush was, of course, a member of a secret society. So is his son, W. Bush, and so is John Kerry. I believe all of them belong to the same group. Now, it is so that Jesus never did something in secret, that he always preached and spoke in public, where people could hear him. The Bible also says, I have no part of these secret organizations, and societies must rather to expose them. Want to know about these things, Oath of Evil, or read or go and look videos on what Professor Walter Weiff has to say about them. He exposed them because he was part of it. He fully understands what's happening, and that guy's got probably the best intelligence service running ever, because he's got people across the world actually reporting to him. So so it might be that it had to do with the opium trade. There's a lot of people who say it's a conspiracy theory, but it might also be true. Fact is that the Taliban, within 1 year, in other words, after one harvest, after taking over again after the US and NATO ran away, of shame, they stopped the trade completely. Yeah, they just did. Boom. So you want to tell me that the entire NATO and the second beast couldn't do it in the 20 years they were in Afghanistan? Really? They couldn't do it? No. Really, guys, really. But then, of course, the Taliban changed, because then they started bringing in the strict ideas about Islam. And again came back all the full burqa, the way to dress as the Islamic woman, which we in the West, of course, find totally idiotic. But that's their rules and systems, and I have a lot of Muslim female friends as well. In fact, my first late wife was Muslim, but modern, not at all like these Taliban idiots. And she would wear the scarfing over her head. But she was thoroughly modern, being French. And so she would explain a lot of the Quran to me. I actually wrote a book on that as well, Codename Wednesday 7, where we go into it in great detail. I actually have Codename Wednesday 7 here. I can show you. Where is it now? Yeah, it's quite far away. I can reach out. Yeah, yes, Codename Wednesday 7, and as you can see, it is a really, it's a substantial book. It's over 500 pages. But anyway, that's, man, when everything falls down, anyway, it doesn't matter. That's where we go into the Quran and we start seeing how these people justify whatever they're doing. It's a very interesting book because it explains their mentality. Now, of course, you need to understand the mentality of a terrorist you're hunting. Otherwise, you won't get far. You'll be always on a very limited tactical level. You probably just bite, you just walk down the street, people shoot at you, you shoot back. That's it. You know nothing. You just bite. That's all you are. But in the secret world, in the shadows, we actually do know our enemies very, very well. So we would study them. And we would understand how they think and how they operate. And once you understand that, you almost always can get the upper hand because you know how they're going to react in any certain condition, and so you can outthink them. And so they might walk into an ambush where you're waiting. Yeah. That happens often. And so we look at that as well. It's important, as I say again, you need to understand these people. So it was always going to happen. The Taliban were very strict madrasa schools, which Barack Obama, by the way, also attended. Yeah, did you know that? Yeah. Yeah, he attended it as a young man or as a youngster. Did that have any influence on him? Tell me, gentlemen, you people listening to me, tell me, did the communists not say to you that, give me a child and I will make him a communist within a year or two? Huh? They not say that? Actually, it's a Jesuit principle more than a communist one. They said it long before the communists. Yeah, fascinating, isn't it? Very fascinating also that under Obama, I think 96% or something, or even more, of the people who came into the US as refugees were all Muslims. Yeah, all of it. Yeah. There's also a guy, of course, who said that America is not a Christian nation. Yeah, no, not at all. Said that way in Cairo. Yeah, we talk a lot about Barack Obama. Whatever he was or wasn't, he was, well, anyway, everybody has an opinion on him. Well, anyway, so it was always going to change. So for the Taliban then to start implementing these strict Islamic rules is really not strange. You should have expected that, and the moment they took over again, after the US ran away, they start implementing the strict Sharia laws as well. But do you know you find the Sharia laws also in Britain, in the UK, in London? Do you know that? Sharia law, by the way, is a strict Islamic type of punishments. In other words, where you get flogged in public or you get beheaded or, very, very, no human rights there whatsoever. There's no mercy there. I always smile when they talk about Allah the merciful. I use it a lot in my books, but I'm sarcastic when I say that. Because it's not. It's not a merciful system at all. And why not? Because it's a copy of a Catholic one. In fact, there's no difference between the two. Both of them reject Jesus. And since they reject Jesus, well, read oath of evil. If I shock the hell out of you by saying such things, good. I'm really glad I do. Perhaps you should wake up and find out what we found out when we started studying these things. But anyway, to make a long story very short, today you have a strict, same as you would find in Saudi and other Middle Eastern countries and also in the London. Yeah, how do they do that? Because if Muslims there have a problem, They don't have to go to the courts. May I say the word white courts, by which I mean English courts? No, they would go to their own councils and things, and they, of course, they apply Muslim Sharia law. Yeah, happens. Yeah, yeah. Interesting, huh? In the UK. France as well. There are places in France where the police even can't go, close to Paris, where it's totally Muslim. And they're too scared to walk in there. And basically all their terrorists comes from that part of France as well. Think it's by chance? No, of course not. And how do you overcome that? No, you get enough policemen, you just go in there and you recreate order. There is no such thing as a no-go zone in the world. It doesn't exist, in my eyes. It should never exist. It never existed in South Africa, by the way. I hear a lot of rumors now. Oh, you couldn't go into Tokoza. Oh, the police. No. Police were everywhere. Everywhere. There were no such thing as a no-go zone, but I'm sure people will want to argue with me. Anyway, so that's what we look at, and we're going to look at it in greater detail as we go along in this talk. But let's go to the other points inside the book. What's happening in the background in Codename 1 Alpha is actually, to me, very, very interesting, because there's actually two things. One thing is I wanted to introduce the reader to a armor battle group. Simply because many of the readers, most of my readers, are actually not South Africans, so they don't really understand many of the technology and the things I'm explaining here and revealing to them. Most people will think of South Africa as just a backwards country, which is not possible to, nothing good can come from it. And I think a lot of South Africans will actually agree it's not what it used to be. But it did come up with magnificent weapon systems, I can tell you that. And one of them, which I discuss here in this book, is actually the Rooikat, which is like, it almost looks like a tank. I will play a video for you here in the back, which I made at the Armor School Museum in Tempe. And I still have to get people to talk about the vehicle. It's very fascinating. It comes out in the book that the first cannon which I used on this vehicle is actually from the Navy. It's a 76.2 millimeter deck gun. I think the Orta Brera, which the Navy had some of them left over, and so the army took them and they put them in the tank. They just changed the way they were shooting with them, the way that shell would go off. And do you know what? That tank, that gun turned out to be a fantastic tank gun. It's very powerful. It is high pressure, so it just moves, and you can shoot, of course, an array of different shells with it, and it turned out to be very, very good. But then it was replaced with a L7, a copy of a L7, which was a main 105 millimeter gun, which the Brits actually invented after the Second World War. And that, for many, many years, was actually the Western tank gun. And that's what it's equipped with today. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic vehicle. It didn't see combat in our wars, came too late. But on Legacy, we will definitely have somebody speaking about it. It is mentioned briefly because it formed part of a group called 6-3 Mag, but only after the war. And we have one of the people talking about that there as well. Probably did by the time that you're listening here. So I introduce that to you. And the other thing we also look at is what will happen if you find a Western Special Forces team operating in South Africa in a rural area. For whatever reason, there's many, many reasons why they might try that, especially since South Africa is a BRICS country now. So it's anti-NATO, especially also when South Africa is hosting and protecting a lot of jihadis under the Muslim truce, which I spoke about many, many times in the books and which I warn about, and of course is denied. And it will always be denied. It has to be, but there's a lot of things, if you look at it from the outside and inside, which indicates there is such a thing happening. Because we know we know if you do a bit of research, you'll find out that the London tube bombings was planned in Southern Africa. Online, they talk about Zambia. That's the 2005 bombings. In fact, it was planned in Johannesburg, in Fortsburg, to be precise. Whereafter you suddenly saw the South African visa requirements to go to the UK suddenly just changed. Yeah. Well, it's a Commonwealth country, I believe, and yet they are treated like little slaves. Yeah, we should bow down there to the king, man. I'm just being sarcastic. I will never bow down to the King Charles the second or whatever the idiot calls himself, or Queen Elizabeth. I consider the royals to be nothing special. Really not. Tell me when last did one die in battle? I think in 1468 or something. More than 500-600 years ago. That's when the last one had the decency to die in battle. Now, for those of you who actually know history, I said in battle. I didn't say flying into a mountain on the way to the US or coming back from the US, as happened to one of the royals in the Second World War. May he rest in peace. That's not dying in battle. And we all know that when those two princes, what's their name, Harry and the other one, we all know about their roles in Iraq and Afghanistan, nothing to write home about. And then the uncle who got accused of Epstein Island, Andrew, he flew combat during the Falkland Wars. Did he do something special? No. It's the same as anybody else. So, nothing great about him. But anyway, doesn't matter. So that's the one thing we talk about, and the other thing which I want to talk about, I'm going to go into some detail with, it was Bat 21. Now, Bat 21 is the name of a movie which many of you will remember, and that's about the rescue of a U.S. Air Force officer who was some kind of expert on missile technology or something. And so they had to rescue him, and they did rescue him, and it did cost a lot of, really a lot of lives. And a very famous movie, I think with Gene Hackman, I'm not too sure, was made called Bat 21. In fact, it's wrong. The name was not Bat 21. His call sign was Bat 21 Bravo, to be correct. And we dedicate quite a bit of time on it. Why? Because the entire book is also about combat search and air rescue. By practicing these things, and that is the cover to hunt down these Western Special Forces teams, which might be in South Africa. So this was a training exercise which did happen. And Special Forces, South African Special Forces, being simulated to be Western Special Forces. In other words, they lowered their standards completely, and they forgot that they could actually speak the languages or just disappear into the local population. They kept together as a group, and they tried to make their way to the ocean, because that's where they will run. We know everything about Western Special Forces tactics. Everything. We know everything about you. You know what? You know what about us? Nothing. You know nothing about us. In fact, you have to read GMJ books to find out a little bit, which we explain to you. We know there's 22 or something intelligence services listening to my main channel, Legacy Conversations. But be sure, when we speak to Special Forces and other people, we always speak 50 years behind. We never speak about current operations. You know why? I'm not going to make it easy for you. No, I'm not. I'm not going to help you. It's not my job to do that. But you know nothing about us, and we know everything about you. And so we can predict you. I know what you're going to do. Read the codename Castleberry, which I spoke about before. And in Castleberry, I actually explained to you what's going to happen if a Navy SEAL team is caught landing on a South African beach. And you think we won't know? Yeah. Think very carefully before you say yes. Because remember, South Africa as a BRICS nation shares intelligence with who? What do I hear? Chinese? Yes, Russian, yes. India, yes. Brazil, yes. Other countries, yes. All of it, all of it. They share intelligence. So it's very possible that we would find out and wait for you and ambush you. And then what you will do is you will move back into the water. That's your training. You're going to run into fire here. Most of you will be dead, but those who survive will move back into the water and then you will die. But in Castleberry, because of my late wife and certain people talking to me, I did not reveal for terrorists to know how to kill you under the water. It is so damn logical, I don't have to do it. So we know how you operate. So in this book, you have two teams simulating special forces, Western special forces, and they go on the run. And then this armor group is hunting them down. Did they get hold of them? Well, read the book, and yeah, of course they did. But a lot of lessons were learned, actually. I mean, one of them was that the book is called after one of the operators inside the books. It's a Zulu woman, very educated. She's dead now. She died with her entire team, fighting all the way. And then another team went in and killed those who killed them. It is mentioned, not described, it's just mentioned here. When we refer to as 1 Alpha, and she actually appeared first in the books, and in real life that was too in the codename Sanford, where she was assassin team, member of the assassin teams. And if you want to know what I'm talking about when I say assassin teams and egg breakers, please go and read Codename Crocodile. I do explain a lot more there. I'm not going to do it again. Read that book. It will teach you about what I'm talking about also. And I do describe in the books, this book too, what the assassin team would be. And they denied, of course. They damn well should be. And I will advise you not to go and find out too much about them because, you don't want to do that. You will walk into just hilarious. I mean, they will laugh at you. What are you talking about, man? If you read the Jim Day books, are you insane? Don't you know it's fiction, man? Yeah, it's just fiction, of course. And so 1 Alpha is the team leader here, and she's actually part of one of the teams who is running, on the run, simulating the Western Special Forces. And when they capture her, she meekly surrenders, and that should really have warned the army people that there's something wrong here. Because when she just meekly surrenders, I just walked up to her and then she just punched. She just attacked him all the way and she started running again. One of them actually ends up with a blue eye and a broken nose. You have a right to do this, by the way. If you're on the run in training exercises and people want to capture you without killing anybody or seriously damaging him, injuring, you have a right to overcome your enemy, and they have a right to overcome you. So it's very possible that the dog might bite you, or that once they get hold of you, they're going to hang you upside down and do a few things with you, which is why the instructors are always around, so that it doesn't go too far. But it's very realistic. I mean, when you go on the run, man, you run, and you don't stop, and you need to reach your objective. You need to get out. So anyway, that's part of the book. And then, as I said, Bat 21. Now, you can understand why they wanted to rescue Bat 21, because you'll remember that Hanoi Hilton is where they were kept in that prison. But legally speaking, of course, when you don't declare war on a country and you start bombing that country, in the first place, it's an act of war. That country has every right in the world to shoot your pilots down and even to execute them, because they are air pirates. They are not covered by the Geneva Convention. So North Vietnam was not that wrong to keep these people in jail, but they were wrong in treating them that badly. It is inhuman. It should not have happened. And then, of course, there's Hanoi Jane. Hanoi Jane. Yes, that one. Remember that actress sat there on for the anti-aircraft guns. And then she said afterwards, no, I didn't know I was sitting on an anti-aircraft guns killing my fellow Americans. I'm that stupid, I was 23 years old and blonde. I find that hard to believe, sometimes you look at things and you say to yourself, well, does this story make sense? Is it possible? I mean, is it so far-fetched that you have to think this is just the biggest bullshit? Um, yeah, so yeah, anyway, we don't even need to speak further, but she is in the books and we do talk about her, not in a nice way either. Now, Bat 21's problem was he was not shot down in North Vietnam. He was shot down in South Vietnam. We also go into great detail in the North Vietnamese, so Soviet anti-aircraft missiles and guns and things like that, which is very fascinating. It's fascinating because we faced them in Angola as well. And that's why the Ukrainians, has absolutely no air superiority whatsoever in that war of NATO against Russia, which you're losing. Oh, shame, you're losing so badly. It's actually funny to see these little chihuahuas, like Germany and the UK and France. Even though I have great respect for the French military, but they're not up to Russia, not at all. It's funny to see the little chihuahuas going there at the back, you don't have the weapons to back you, mate. And the US, probably your second beast, can't help you either. They don't have the weapons either. Doesn't matter what Trump says, you don't have the technology. Yeah, you just don't. You don't. Read American military might debunked. So we go into that as well, and we look at the tactics that they would use. So they would know that the pilot is shot down. They would know that the pilot is there somewhere. They would try to corner him, and then they would surround him with anti-aircraft batteries, and then they would try to get even more aircraft to come and fetch him. So they might not jam his calls, which he would make on his survival radio. They would actually triangulate that. And then they would wait for the rescue and see if they can shoot them down as well. It's a bitch of a thing. I mean, I really admire those parajumpers, the PJs who go and rescue these people. We're specialist units in all militaries. I mean, we used our paravats, our paratroopers to do that. In fact, we had a fellow talking about just one such rescue, many thousands of views. You can go and listen to it on that rescue. And when I went to a paratrooper function when I was last in South Africa, I actually said to one of the guys, he didn't want to speak to us officially, but he was also involved in that rescue, telling us what happened when they rescued a downed pilot in Angola in 1979. So you're flying into danger. Look, there's no way about it. You're going to fly into danger. That's why I also say in this book, and it will shock a lot of people, but it's not the job of special forces to go and rescue a pilot. No. There's specialist units to do that. If you are close by and you are capable of rescuing him on the way back or whatever, yeah, I suppose you can do it, but mostly you will not use special forces to do that. It's not worth it. Special forces are too valuable to go and rescue a pilot and walk into a hornet's nest. They are not equipped to do that. They are basically light infantry, very, very small groups, and they depend on stealth. That is the South African version. Of course, if you are the US version, then of course there will be thousands of Marines waiting to rescue you, and you can, of course, then start major wars. Total different outlook, man. Total different outlook. But we have to say, this Bat 21 Bravo was rescued, I think, by Navy SEALs. One was a South Vietnamese SEAL, a Vietnamese fellow, and the other was an American, and they did well. I really take my hat off for them. They did very well. They went down the river, they infiltrated to where he knew he was, and they got him out. The problem with him is that he never made any attempt, and I don't mean this badly on the colonel himself. Really, I'm not. I'm just I'm just discussing to you what happened, because we can learn. We can actually learn from this. We can learn from history, you know. So the problem with him is he did actually nothing. It's a Lieutenant Colonel Iciel Hambleton. At that stage, I think he was promoted afterwards. Now, now he was a navigator, electronic warfare officer, so he knew everything about ballistic missile technology and missile countermeasures. If he was ever captured, he would not have come out again. Like so many of the Americans who are still missing, they were probably handed over to the Soviet Union, and they probably ended up there. Either they became Soviet citizens or they died, probably died. Because, you know, most American officers and people of those days were very patriotic men. Some of them saw service in Korea and also in the Second World War. They're not going to just become communists. Even today, you know, when an American wants to insult you, you're always a communist. Communist. And then, of course, if I want to insult you even more, but this is now from the left side, from the liberals, from the wokeism. Yeah. No, then, you know, you're anti-Semite. Yeah, you hate Jews. Yeah. Also, you're anti-gay. You're anti-LBGTAFX, whatever. Yeah, you're against them. You're a horrible person. Yeah. And then what's the other insult? Oh, you love the Donald Trump. Oh, you love the orange man. Oh, what did they say? Liberal woman shouldn't have sex with a man who likes Donald Trump. Well, I don't think any guy who actually admires Donald Trump will want to have sex with you, madam. Really not. I have never in my life actually seen a pretty or good-looking liberal woman ever, because she opens her mouth and what comes out is so bad that, man, you have to run away. And besides that, it's very easy to get her because she's not really, most of them don't really have that high morals. I mean, it's quite easy. And if it's easy, why would you want it? But anyway, whatever, that's my opinion, man. I'm just joking around when I say such things. Don't take me too seriously. But that's what they say, of course. You know, you're a communist. It's such bullshit. I've been called all those names. None of them are true. But anyway, a guy like that really should not be captured. And there was a standing order out that this downed air crew should be rescued if at all possible. And man, that makes sense. I mean, you don't want a pilot to go and fly in an enemy country knowing he's going to be very, very mistreated or even killed, which is merciful at times, if he's captured. So you want him to have that reassurance that help will come down. But anyway, as I said, the colonel was not shot down in North Vietnam. He was actually flying combat in South Vietnam. But the problem was that there was about 50,000 North Vietnamese army troops coming across that border. They were overrunning the South Vietnamese. And so he was behind enemy lines, but not in North Vietnam, if you understand what I'm telling you. And it wasn't even far. He was about 2 miles. What's that? 4 kilos behind enemy lines. But that's also the other damn problem is when there's a lot of enemy soldiers around. If he was 10 miles behind them, then when you got the Renf people there, the rear Ekkel and Mother, you know, the F word, then it's much easier. But now he's almost in the battle. And so he couldn't move. So if I say that the problem with the colonel was he wasn't moving, he just got down, he landed, and he went into hiding immediately. He got into a hole and he stayed there. The problem with that is, of course, if he could only move towards the river, it would make it so much easier to rescue him. And they were thinking of all sorts of things, how to rescue him, you know, perhaps with an armored Frost. Now that takes us back to the West hero called George Patton. Yeah, remember the tall general? He was actually quite tall, and he had his 2 ivory Colt pistols with him, and hard driving man, speak French fluently, could speak French. He's the one who said they shouldn't have fought the Nazis, they should have fought the Soviet Union. And then he died, just after that, he died mysteriously in a car accident. Yeah, just like that, I think at the end of 1945. And then just a week or 2 after he died, his niece committed suicide as well. Yeah, strange. Well, like all the senior officers on the US side and some on the British side as well, they all had little scalumpies, you know, little mistresses on the side. But he was a strange fellow, this Patton. He was an educated man in the sense that come from a very wealthy family. He was actually an Olympian. He participated in the Olympic Games as a horse rider or something. And as I said, he could speak French fluently, so he was valuable. Was he a great general? Yeah, no, where comes the story? In my eyes, no, not at all. Nothing special about him. Why do I say that? I feel he was never tested. He was never without air superiority, and he always had the advantage of people, of men. And he was fighting against what? The remains of a German army. Most of the fighting were not taking place in the West, it was taking place in the East. If you ask the Germans of that time, where was a war going on, they all talk about the East Front. And they talk with awe and they're scared. Why? Because we're facing the USSR, we're facing the Soviet Union. Just facts, guys. Something which is not mentioned in Western militaries. But in 1945, he actually launched an entire armor thrust towards one of the camps, one of the prisoner of war camps in Germany to rescue his son-in-law. Yeah, yeah. And they all got wiped out. Yeah, they got wiped out. All those tanks. They reached the place. They found the son-in-law. And then they had to withdraw, leaving 99% of the prisoners there, including the son-in-law who was now being shot in the ass. Not seriously, thank God. And then they withdrew and they got wiped out. The entire armored column got wiped out. It almost cost Patton his rank. But of course, it was covered up. Of course, some pigs are more equal. But they were thinking of that too. They were thinking that perhaps they can make a quick armor thrust and get him out, but that wasn't viable. It seems that the closest enemy to the colonel was 300 feet away. That's not far. So he had to be quite quiet. He was lucky when he landed. When he descended with his parachute, there was thick fog. And so they couldn't see him really. And he was... The other problem with what he had is he became sort of delirious. He didn't have enough food and water, or he didn't take it, even if he had with him. And so he would make stupid mistakes. At one stage, he was standing boldly upright, betraying his position. He was making many mistakes. And it's also that there was a Madden survival pack. Now, I actually, when the website was still going, and I might put it up again, I don't know, it's not worth it. 20 people a month go to a website and it cost me $100 a year, $150 a year. Why will I bother? It didn't help me at all. But the Madden survival pack is something we would drop from Sky Raider, I think, which is a prop type of aircraft, very good one actually, can linger around, the jets can't. And then this thing would dive down, and while he's covering fire from the escorting fighters, and then it would drop like a survival pack with everything in it. Now this thing landed about 160 feet away from this fellow, which is really not far, but he made no attempt whatsoever to go fetch it. So they knew where he was, and so did the North Vietnamese. And they were stacking around him all the anti-aircraft guns. So there's also a story that where he killed a North Vietnamese soldier with his knife. That's also what the Americans is telling about. That they say he did. Probably got decorated for it. But is that true? You really think a guy was in a weakened state and was sort of delirious already and is not all there? He's capable of killing a much younger, fitter, strong young soldier with a knife? Yeah, I doubt it. I really doubt it. But anyway, it is also there where they started using the golf course code. Now, this guy was really a good golfer. So for him they started speaking a code. They would say to him, okay, if you're on this golf course and you're playing, say, to a second hole, then he would know the second hole on that golf course is, say, 350 yards west. And then he could figure out what they wanted him to do. So he moved out to the river. The two seals were waiting for him and they got him out. Okay, guys, I spent a lot more time to describe it than what I described here. I think by 21, Bravo is a very interesting study case. A lot of people, as I say, died because of him, and he made speeches afterwards where he said, I have to live with the fact that these young men died to try to save me. I can only say thank you, and thank you to their families, and I hope to God that I'm worth it. What a wonderful man. What a wonderful story. If we can only find such officers again in the US military, I would change my opinion on them. But right now, what we find there is a second beast military, and it's not worth it. So that's the one story I wanted to tell you. The other story, which is in chapter 7, it is really great detail, so I'll have to make it very short here for you, is where Angelique asked a question. She asked Foxtrot, while we're flying on one of his rescue missions, which is a training mission, she's only there to observe. And she's actually there to brief Foxtrot, so they have his earphones on, which plugged into each other. It's not through the normal circuit. And so she starts there and talking, and quite safe because what she reveals doesn't really matter. She's not revealing that in the background. She wants to go and actually raid one of these clinics, which they use to abuse children with. But I'll get to that. She does that. She asked Foxtrot a question, and I'm asking you a question now as well. Remember what I said to you. If a character starts speaking like this, where they start asking questions and they expect an answer and the answer comes, that is not just there for idle, I don't have anything else to do, let me just type this quickly for you. No. I'm giving you a message. I'm actually, in fact, I'm educating you. You can call me a lecturer if you want, because that's exactly what it comes down to. I want you to learn something from this so you can remember it, because the evil of white slavery and of human trafficking cannot be described. It's something you have to see, and I tried my best in this book, and I had a thoroughly unpleasant task to also describe to you how they break these people and what happens. I'll get to it. That's why I say to you, this is not a book I want children to read, even though I watered it down a lot. But Angelique asks this question. She says, what is worth $90 when bought, and if treated well, can earn up to $250,000 in a year for a limited time, let's say for 3 years? What is she talking about? She's talking about a young woman. She's talking about a young girl who they get into basically the sex trade. They can buy her for $90, and then they can rent her out for $250,000. And she lasts about 3 years, and then she's dead. Yeah, can be your daughter, can be your sister, can be your mom. It's a human being, like you and me. She can think, she can talk, she can feel pain. She has feelings. She probably just wants to live. Yeah, but now she's become worth what? $90 to be bought, and $250,000 for a master's who's controlling her. Yeah. Shocking, isn't it? And there's a fellow which we actually discuss here, and it's called Ludwig Tarzan Feinberg. Now, this wanker is a convicted trafficker of women. And they say he was also a Russian mafia gangster. He was from Russia, but he grew up in Israel. Oh, so he's a Jew. And not all Jews are like that, so don't point fingers again. And frankly, most of the Russian mafia members are Jews. How's that? When the Bolsheviks took over, about 90% of them were what? They were Jews. Does that mean that all Jews are horrible people and they should be killed and hated? No, of course not. I'm just pointing out to you that it's really weird. But anyway, he was trafficking people, and he was convicted, and then he fled to Israel. And of course, in Israel, you can't be extradited. Once you're in Israel and you're a Jew or Israeli citizen, It doesn't matter what you've done wherever, you can't be extradited. That's why you find many times these people commit their crimes in New York or wherever, and then they run to Israel and they sit there and laugh at justice. Yeah, that's what they do. Can you blame the Israelis for that law? The answer is no, of course not. Because they firmly believe that as Jews and as a group they are persecuted. And you cannot argue with that either, because they are in many, many instances. And through the ages. I mean, the Catholic system used to kill Jews like you can't believe. Why? Because they say that Jews has murdered Jesus. Then the Pope, I think this village idiot, the late one, Francis, actually apologized for that, and he said something like, you cannot blame the Jews of today for what happened then. It's in my new book, code name Snake 606. Yeah, I look at it and I say, that's not an apology. No. The only thing that Pope Francis actually said is, yes, we actually still blame you because the church don't change. Rome will not change. It doesn't change. And so, the Jews actually did murder Jesus by handing him over to the Romans to do so. But you cannot blame the people of today. So it's a non-apology. That is why I said this is bullshit. It's not an apology, and it's definitely not removing the accusation. Of course, a lot of people, when you say such things, will immediately jump to say, oh, anti-Semitism. Hey, I'm discussing what happened here. Not to say that I'm saying that. I'm using the words of this village idiot Pope Francis. And I'm telling you from a legal viewpoint what value his statement was, and it's nothing. It's not an apology at all. And if you go and read the Oath of Evil and you read the oath which the Jesuits actually take, in it they say, I will stoop as low as to become a Jew. Yeah, they like you, huh? They really like you. Yeah, they love you. No, they don't like you at all. Not at all. Not at all. So anyway, so this fellow, I don't know if he's still alive or not, but he became quite famous for this type of thing. And he was also operating in the US at one stage, and he would beat these girls up. And the FBI and everybody was there. They were there undercover in the place, and they would see all these assaults and things, and they just did nothing. They wouldn't break their cover. Perhaps you can understand that up to a point, but they didn't do anything about it. They basically, he was sentenced, I think, to 3 years in prison, and then left for Israel. But do you know how many actual slaves there are today? Because, slavery stopped. I mean, we all know there's no such thing as slavery anymore. We know about, I think in the 1850s, the British Empire decided they will abolish their slaves. And so they basically bought the slave owners out, and they gave all of these people their freedom. Yeah, they did that. You have to admire that. Then, of course, came the American Civil War, which was all about slavery and state rights, even though they denied it at the time, but it was all about slavery, we know that. And so the slaves got free there as well, but slavery went on. I would say another 50, 60 years almost in South America. It was only abandoned, I think, in Brazil or places like that in about 1912. Would you believe? Now remember, if you have a slave, it's the same as having a dog or a cat or anything. I mean, if you want to flog the slave to death, you can do so. You're the owner. You can do what you want. If you want to have sex with her, you can do that. Even if she doesn't want to, it doesn't matter. And the system is so evil that those two slaves who actually get married, they whatever children they bring to life is also slaves. You see where this is heading. It's a dreadful thing. I mean, don't think there were anything like Gone with the Wind, where you have this black female who's a slave, and I think it was the first black woman who ever got an Oscar in that movie, Gone with the Wind. And she has this fun relationship with her madam. Wasn't like that at all. No, the real truth is most of the slaves would be brutally abused, brutally punished, brutally flogged, families broken apart. You can imagine this. Now you're a family, you've got your wife, even though we're both slaves. You love her, she's sold to another plantation, so she goes. You never see her again. Children, oh no, she takes the children with her. When the child is about 10 years old, no, child is now sold into a prostitution by the new owner. Guys, can you imagine this? It's horrible. But let me tell you, by the time I wrote this book, which is a few years ago, so it's worse today, there are about 20 million such slaves. Some say 30 million, and most people agree on 27 million, which is undisputed. That's what they say, how many slaves there are in the world. Now, that is the entire population of about Australia and New Zealand would come to that. The population of Portugal, Greece, and Czech Republic all put together. In the Middle East is about the population of Iraq. Can you imagine this? Imagine what I just said to you. All those people slaves. Perhaps not in chains, many of them are, but you find them in the open. So, yeah. It is the crime which is second only to the drug trade, and they say it will overtake the drug trade as well. It probably did by now. When we talk about 27 million slaves, we're actually talking about adults now. You can add another 13 million children. Yeah. So we're talking now about 43 million people in bondage, slaves. That's what, a little bit less than South Africa's population. Man, it's a lot of people. It's really a lot of people. And they're making 32 billion with a B, billion dollars a year out of it. It's probably more. That's what we know about. Now, a guy like Donald Trump has worked his entire life to have about $10 billion. If he has that much, which I doubt. But let's put it in perspective. $52 billion every year. That's what they make about it. Now, most of the victims are actually women and girls, because not all of them are old enough to be a woman. And that's 55% of them, which means that 45% of them are actually boys and young men. Or me. What do you know that? Then they also actually target pregnant women. I'll explain to you why just now. But the ratio is mostly 80% women and girls, not male. So you can't be too sure. So there's a bit of argument between the 55% and 80%. It really depends on which country you are and where you are. But why a pregnant woman? Yeah, here's the answer. This is exactly what Angelique answers. He says, because the baby is then taken and never seen again. Foxtrot, you cannot even imagine what is done to that baby. The most horrific sexual abuse. Few survive, and those children that actually survive are suicidal. 72% of them, if not more, will commit suicide. They will never be the same again. The mom is then killed or used as a sex slave to produce more babies. She has no choice about this. If you go on the dark net, I don't go on the dark net, but you will definitely find babies being raped and abused. Man, we live in a sick society, and then some of these secret organizations actually do believe in human sacrifice. Where do you think they get those babies and things from? Think about it. Think about it. And it's happening. I'm not joking to you. All of these are totally true. The statistics in this book is beyond belief. It is the state of California, which you know is a nutcase to begin with. And they're the most liberal state probably in the US besides New York. Now that is where you're going to find, according to the FBI, 3 out of the 13 highest child sex trafficking areas in California. That would be in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego. And all of them are sanctuary cities. Okay, right. So, do you think there's a link between these people doing this and knowing they're not really going to be punished if they are found because they're in a sanctuary city, and them not doing it, say, in another state where they are going to be punished severely if they're caught? You think there's a link? There's a link between them? Of course, there's a flippant link, man. It's ridiculous. And the other problem area is Dallas, Fort Worth area in Texas. That is where about 15% of all the emergency calls come from. New York, Florida are also top abusers in the US. So what can you say? Wherever liberalism gets into, with the exception of Texas, but Texas is touch and go these days, you know. Wherever you see that, you find child abuse. Isn't this funny? Everyone just thinks this happens mostly in the Middle East or Africa. You're wrong. You're wrong. Those that export slaves, in other words, those countries where women are grabbed and they are misled and they are told they're going to go for good job somewhere. You know where they come from? Mostly Eastern Europe. Belarus, yeah. Moldova, yeah. Russia, Ukraine especially these days. Albania, Bulgaria, Lithuania, Romania, China, Thailand, where I live, and Nigeria. The Middle East are not even in the top 10 of these countries where these things happen. Yeah, isn't that shocking, huh? Yeah. Why is that? Well, perhaps a blonde, blue-eyed white girl is probably worth more than an olive-skinned, Arab girl with dark hair. I don't know. I mean, I don't like blondes myself, to be honest. But, but that's just the statistics. I don't know. So tell me, where do I go to? Once they are now sort of misled to go to these places, where do I actually go? They go to Belgium. Yeah, that's Europe. Germany, Greece, Israel, Italy, Japan, Netherlands, Swineland, of course, Swineland, Switzerland, Thailand, yeah, quite a lot of Burmese people here, Turkey and USA. Well, what do you know? Mostly Western Europe and the US or their allies. There you go. There you go. All of them are advanced countries. They do well. They're advanced. They're fairly rich. They're doing well. And yeah. And 80% of the time they would actually end up in strip clubs, these peep and touch shows. I don't even know what that is. Massage parlors, yeah, and outright prostitution. That's why they get bought for $90 and they make $250,000. Even if she cost $10,000 in the beginning, you're still making so much money, it's fine. This $10,000 thing were actually is what this Ludwig Tarzan Feinberg had to say. That was his attitude, what he was telling them about. They also then end up in sweatshops, servitude, agricultural work. Where they are all of these places, they're subjected to beatings, abuse, and inhumane conditions. And of course, they can't go back. They don't have the money, they don't have the passports. And besides that, they are humiliated, they don't want to face their family again. So how do they break them? I take no pleasure in telling you this, but they are broken by rape. In other words, they are raped completely, gang raped, they're beaten, they're whipped. And I mean whipped, starved. They are confined alone, they're intimidated with threats to their family. They are forced into drug use and shame. We know that in China, something like 90% of all North Korean women who escape to China, they will end up in human trafficking. It's very bad, very bad. And if they are then caught and they are found and they are deported back to North Korea, they are executed, or they're thrown into gulags, and they are publicly shamed, as well as their families. So more than 50,000 of them will die every year. Some of these people are less than 6 years old. Do you know that 46%, that's almost half of the children sold into slavery, is actually sold by their own families? Yeah. 90% of the victims actually know the uncle or family member who starts this, yeah, most of them. So it doesn't happen with a stranger from outside in the beginning. It is your own uncle or your brother or whoever who is coming to abuse you. That's the same everywhere. But with human trafficking, where somebody is now stolen 54% of the time a stranger is involved. And it's either by direct kidnapping, in other words, they just grab you, or it is by abduction by way of promise of work somewhere. And you would think that this crime is only committed by men, but in fact, 42% of them are women. Yeah. And sometimes they even work together. So we know that. We've seen it in South Africa with that other idiot, what's his name, who committed suicide, Van Rooyen. Now, the flying squad and myself, we were actually there when Van Rooyen killed himself. It's in my book. Mean Streets 2, book number 2, Mean Streets. I describe the incident there as well as in Verwetenlose Strate. And for those people who think that the police had some type of pedophile thing going in the South African police force, and therefore we killed the woman with Van Rooyen to cover up and his mistress or whatever, his common law wife, but Tannie, you're talking shite. It's nonsense. We were there. We know what happened. I spoke to a journalist the other day, not about it. She was wanting to do things on the online, and I just giving her a bit of advice. Since on the other channel we have millions of views, unlike this one, which is fine too. And she started talking about the Van Rooyen. I said, look, I was there. I'm telling you now, that's not what happened. All hell broke loose that morning. We were driving around a day like every other day. And the next moment, the child protection unit started shouting, they're chasing a guy, they need assistance. We as the flying squad took great exception to them trying to chase somebody. It's our job. So we chased this guy down. He was driving a Nissan 1400 Bakkie, if I remember, a red one. It's many years ago, so forgive me if I make a mistake here and there, but basically that's what happened, and we can testify to. And the next moment, the Bakkie made like a swerving motion, and we still had no idea why we're chasing this guy. And I remember a constable or somebody said, he just shot the Tannie. He just shot the woman next to him. That's true, he killed her. Harolf, I think her name was. They were living together. And then the next moment he shot himself and the vehicle ran out of the road, of course. He wasn't dead. He wasn't dead. And we're standing around and the duty officer arrived and said, why did you shoot this guy? And we're like, we didn't shoot him. And they even checked our ammunition, which of course we could have replaced if we wanted to, but you would know if we fired shot. I mean, you can sniff your firearm or you can check your hands. You know, there's many tests you can do. And of course, if somebody fired a shot from a police side that day, it would have been reported. We are not damn shysters. We're not the US police. We actually report things. And so that's nonsense. He committed suicide, the Tannie died, and then came the story with the house. But that is one of the few times. 6% of the time only, they would be both. There would be couples involved. Yeah. So they will even recruit people with a Down syndrome. Yeah, we'll do that because there are some weirdos who like to rape such women. And as I say women, I mean men as well, you know. Where does the most abuse take place? Well, let's see. All of them are part of a second beast. Interesting, eh? Interesting. Where? Belgium. There you go. Germany, yeah, of course. Greece, Israel, yeah. Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, Thailand, Turkey, and of course the USA. Yeah, interesting about this place is all of them are basically nominally Christian, besides Japan, Thailand, and Turkey. So yeah, I told you already where they come from Eastern Europe. You know, guys, I don't want to carry on talking about this. I've been talking about this long enough. There's really a lot of other information, pages and pages of it. There's two things I can tell you. One is not a joke, but it's a joke we used to tell. And the joke we used to tell is that there was this one fellow we find an outstanding citizen, you know, a local priest or a local dominee or whatever you call him. So he went to an escort agency in a big city, and there he finds his best friend's daughter. And she tells him a life story, abuse, hardship, you know, all of those things. and probably expecting him to help her, after all, he knows her father. And he says, yeah, no problem, I'll just do you tonight and then we talk about it tomorrow. Yeah. There's no honor in the world, I'm never really shocked when I see people do evil. I expect people to do evil. I don't believe in the goodness of people. Not at all. And that's a typical FU type of attitude which most people have. I think as a former policeman and as a former somebody who worked in the shadows, we really, really look at body language. And we notice it. I mean, Rebecca will tell you that I can look at something and I will immediately summarize what's going on there, which other people might not be able to do. I've already said to you, I don't look people in the eye because I can read your soul and I don't want to. You're not my soul, you're not my wife. I've got no reason to stare in your eyes, frankly. There's a lot of people on the Legacy show who actually complains about that. Oh, of course, your eyes are darting around. Yeah. You know why? Because a guy talking to me has severe trauma. He's seen things which will make you cry. Yeah, you will cry if you've gone through what he's gone through. And then I see the hurt, I see the anguish, I see the pain. It sometimes keeps me awake. In fact, the price we pay as presenters at Legacy Conversation is very high. Most people wouldn't know about it. We don't talk about it, but there are times when we just sit there and think, wow, we're so honored to being entrusted with this information and the life story. But at the end of the day, it does have an effect on us as well. There was a law in South Africa where they came out, I think in 2015, where they said that you cannot now come to South Africa with a child unless you have permission in writing from both parents. And so South Africa actually is known as a gateway for this type of thing. It is known as a gateway for human trafficking into Africa. It's nothing to be proud about. And for once, the ANC government did something well. For once, actually, they tried to stop this. They tried to take it on. And immediately, all the tourist companies and people involved with tourism, they immediately raised the biggest stink you can get. They hated this law. Because why? Because they thought there will be less tourists coming now to South Africa because of that, because of South Africa just saying, guys, you don't arrive here with honor a child without having permission from the parents. What the hell is wrong with that? What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that law. There was nothing wrong with that law. And on the visa applications, you'll have to fill in these forms, things like that. But at the end of the day, it's mind-boggling that people can say, we don't want this law because, we got to have a little bit less people here, and then, of course, we make a little bit less money. And therefore, you go and rape that child. It's okay, we don't care, it's not my child. That's basically what these assholes in the tourism industry were saying. Exactly what they were saying. It's a damn scandal, it's a scandal. It's a shameful thing. And they went all out. They went to the news, they went to Parliament, they went to newspapers, online, everywhere. They ran this campaign of changing this law until it was changed. And so now the rapes and the abuse of children just continues merrily. Congratulations. Congratulations. The funny thing is that the tourists themselves had no problem with this. The tourists themselves had absolutely no problem with filling in those forms. They understood what it's about. It's only you people who didn't, and who looked at your damn wallet before you looked at the anguish of a child. I don't know how many of you people has actually seen a rape. I hope none of you experienced a rape. But for us in the police, we dealt with it, Yeah. It's not like a blue movie, No. These people, they shocked. You can see in their eyes. They're totally shocked on what happened to them. And it happens with old people as well. Don't make a mistake. Happens often. And then there's a lot of blood involved, especially with a child. You know, a child's body parts are not grown enough and designed to take a man's thing. And you have to wonder about a man who is able to get it up where a child is involved. You have to wonder about that. That's pedophilia. Now, just remember, pedophilia is not the same as being gay. Most of the gay people are actually not pedophiles. I see that the far right wing like to mix the two up. Mostly not. They're into sex with each other. They want to have sex with males, or if lesbians, they want to have sex with females, two females. It's not the same thing as grabbing an underage child, right? Or a baby even. The cruelty in the world is beyond belief. Anyway, if you want to know more about this type of thing, how your child will be recruited, how your child is approached on Facebook and online, how they get this child of yours or your grandchild for most of you, how they get them into that area, and how they abuse them and what happens and blah, blah, blah. There's two things you can do. You can listen to my friend Jax, who's from Pink Ladies. She's got an organization running. We had some videos of her on right in the beginning. Nobody watched them, sadly so, but if you're interested, please go back and look at it. I'll leave a link for you. That's the first thing. Secondly, talk to my friend Elsa of a Springbok Shot. She also knows really a lot about this. She even gives lectures on it. I will leave her details here as well. If you want to know more, I don't think she charges money to do it. She might ask you just to pay for accommodation or petrol or whatever, but she's more than willing, both of them actually, to go and talk to you. Not at the same time, because one's in Bloemfontein and one is in Port Elizabeth, and they don't even know each other. Point I'm trying to make is, guys, you can prevent this. And that's part of the reason why I wrote chapter 7, is to show to you how these bastards actually get their claws onto these people. And I hope you can use that knowledge to good effect. You know, I did this before in codename Alphabet 32, where I wrote about drug rape. And Facebook banned the book. Yeah. At that stage, I had still a Facebook page, and I thought, well, let me just advertise the book there, because, you know, somewhere you might sit in a pub or in a disco, and now I betray my age or whatever they go to these days. And you might see there's a young woman or somebody in distress, and perhaps you can assist, as is your duty as a Christian. And Facebook banned the book. Yeah, they did. Why? No reason. They don't give reasons, you know. They're little assholes. They don't give reasons at F-book. That's why I'm not on F-book, and I piss on F-book, and I think people who are in F-book are a little bit, you know, shallow. But anyway, the logical conclusion is I don't want you to know what's the symptoms of drug rape. I don't want you to know how to treat it. I don't want you to save these people. Why? Because they're probably doing it. That's the only way they can get laid. Same with this book. Lots of people try to ban it. Not so much for the actual story in it, you know, the combat search and air rescue, the simulation of the Western Special Forces teams. No. They are against the book because we tell the truth. We bring out the statistics. We make the link between terrorism and this. In the book, I also talk about this jihadi brides who actually went from the UK. How stupid can you be? Went to ISIS, and that was also a sort of human trafficking. That's why I said there's a link. I go great detail into it. Why I say that? Because that's what we found when we were working in the field in operations. And I look at that Boko Haram stealing all those Nigerian girls. Was it? Or Kenyan girls? I can't remember. They stole, I think, Nigeria. They stole them in 2012, 13, 15, round about there. And then, of course, Then, of course, the Western politicians like Hillary Clinton was very much up in arms about it, you know. Yeah, and then she forgot about it. Yeah, yeah. Of course she did. It's her husband who went to Epstein Island, Pedo Island, didn't he? Apparently, I'm told he went there 26 times. Yeah, yeah. You know that he actually left his security detail behind in some of those trips, I think about half a dozen times. Probably more. Yeah, yeah. But we're still waiting for the FBI to release the Epstein files. And do you think they will? No, no, they won't. But then they accused Donald Trump. Now, let me tell you, I don't like Donald Trump. I think he's a Jesuit in disguise, which to me is disgusting. I used to like the guy until I found out about his Jesuit links and the way he acts and blah, blah, blah. Still better than hilarious. But anyway, very, very unlikely that Donald Trump would be involved with young girls, teenage girls with small bosoms. If you look at all the women in his life, they are the big bosom, all-American blonde types. They are not looking physically like those girls, so you can see what he likes. And what he doesn't like is somebody who almost looks like a boy. It's just not him. It's not him. So that's bullshit. It's just the Democratic Party with demo rats, trying to just nonsense it again. Did Epstein commit suicide? Well, FBI says he did, so you better believe it. Yeah. Was he an Israeli agent? Yeah, most certainly. Probably, yes. Why? Compromise, man. That's all it is. Compromise. If I can get pictures of you in bed with a young girl, even in today's society, I've got you by the short and curlies. Yeah, especially if she's underage. Prince Andrew, yeah, we know what happened to him. That Virginia, what's her name? The one who came out of it, she committed suicide the other day. Did she? Probably, yeah, because when she said that she's not going to do it, that's 5 years ago. That's again what I'm saying to you guys, that we're not saying this book, that I not say to you that these abused people have a 72% chance of committing suicide. Did I not say that to you? I don't pump sock this, you know. This is research. This is great research. So anyway, that's a book. It's in hardcover, it's in softcover, it's in audio. It's also in Kindle. As you know, I don't support Apple. I'm not going to repeat why. In the previous videos, more than one I told you about San Marino and the attack, and the Apple who will not obey court orders, will not assist the FBI. Yeah, we talk about those things. And also in the book, I just want to say we talk about these US Western intelligence people who are all compromised because they can't keep their thing in their pants. The same with the US military, by which I mean NATO as well. Oh, shame. We talk about it in Voices War Crimes, USA. Yeah, where they go and rape 14-year-olds. Yeah. Kill their parents. Yeah. And then they lie about it. Yeah. Do that too. Yeah, never did it. Of course not. Until you can't deny anymore. And then you just slap him on the wrist. I said, don't do it again. I did it again. Oh, what a shit military. Wow. You know, yeah, anyway, read those books. As I say, the book's available on Amazon. Please get hold of it. If you need more information what I've done in the book, please talk to Elsa or talk to Jax. And if you can't get hold of him, write me an email. I'll put you in contact. And that's it, guys. Hard book for me to review. Not easy, but great read. And they do take revenge afterwards, which is fantastic. It's nice to burn such people at 33,000 feet. Yeah, we enjoyed that. Bye-bye and God bless.